Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and the blessings and the mercy of Allah be upon you all. And today is the first lesson. We're going to touch on two things. Number one is the breath. We're going to bring awareness to the breath, how we breathe. And we're going to learn a technique called box breathing, which is going to allow us to breathe with control on our out breath. And this is a fundamental component of everything that we recite inside our prayer. Everything we recite depends on the breath. So we're going to spend the first half of today's lesson gaining control on our breath and being able to use it with the control that we desire. The second part of today's lesson is going to be bringing awareness to the way that we already pray. So we're basically establishing the starting point. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the way that you pray at the moment and bring more awareness there so that we can take it to the next level. So we're going to start with the breath. Now, when it comes to breathing, I'm going to encourage you to bring attention towards this as if you don't know anything about it. If you've done some exercises on breathing before, that's fine. But just for today's lesson, I want you to really try and bring a beginner's mind. It's not very helpful to believe that you already are an expert on breathing or that you already know everything that there is to know about your breath. So what we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through your breath. I'm going to bring awareness to different parts of your breath. And all I want you to do is just simply to notice. And most importantly, try not to judge yourself. Try not to think about it too much. And just notice how you breathe as a person. So I'm going to start by asking you to bring attention to breathing in. So I just want you to breathe in. Something like that. Yeah, just try and do that. See what happens when you try and do that? And do it a couple of times, do it 2 or 3 times. And bring attention towards it, as if you're not too sure what exactly this is all about. And again, give it time. Okay, that's good. Now I want you to do it again. So all we're going to do this time is just follow your breath in. So, and notice how much you can follow it in. How long is that breath in? Just the breath in, that's it, nothing else. Not breathing it out, not holding the breath or anything. Just breathing in. And try and breathe in through your nose if you can. Good. So you'll notice that there's a part of your breathing which is the breathing in. And it's really important to have a lot of attention on that and to be able to do that. I don't want you to worry too much about it right now, but just be aware that one part of breathing is breathing in. Now when you do that, I want you to try and do that with your nose. So try and feel the breath come in through your nose. Okay, very good. So that's just starting it off, breathing in. Now when you breathe in, you'll notice that as well as breathing in, we also breathe out. So the next thing I want you to do is bring attention to your breathing out. And don't worry about this too much, but just notice it. So when you breathe in, notice that you also breathe out after that, don't you? Okay, and don't be too worried if this is very simple for you or very easy for you. Just notice these 2 points of your breath, breathing in, and then notice the breath coming out as well. Good, take your time. Very good. So I want you to bring attention to breathing in and bring attention to breathing out. And take your time with this. And I'm just going to give you time here. Just do this a couple more times, please. Very good. And now once more, this time I want you to breathe in through your nose. But when you breathe out, just try and breathe out through your mouth. And just feel the breath coming out. Good, and take your time. And again, remember that this may be something that you've done before, it may be something that you've never tried to do before. But regardless of how good or how much of an expert you are at this already, just imagine that you haven't done it before and you're just doing it for the first time today. Very good. So now we've got the breath coming in and we've got the breath going out. Now what I want you to do next is notice that in between breathing in and at this point, before you start breathing out, there's a point you can hold your breath. This is the third point of your breath I want you to bring attention towards. So now what I want you to do is breathe in, hold, then breathe out. Okay, very good. Now just remember to take your time doing this. So breathe in, hold, then breathe out. And just notice what happens. Good, and don't get too excited. Just keep awareness on your breath in, hold it for a second or two, then breathe out. Very good. Now what I'm going to tell you to do is add in the fourth point of your breath. So we're going to breathe in, hold, breathe out, and hold. Is that okay? So we're going to breathe in, hold, out, hold. So we're going to hold after you breathe out as well. Very good. Now you've got 4 points of your breath. For one breath has 4 points. Yeah, we're going to call this a breath cycle. So we're going to have in, hold, out, hold. We've got these 4 points which you should be able to identify. And if you've done that, very good. I just want you to do that a couple more times. So breathe in, hold, out, and hold. Very good. Now that's probably brought a bit more awareness to your breathing, which is really, really important. And obviously this out breath is one of the fundamental components for everything that we ever recite. Everything that we read, it depends on the out breath. So it's important that we can notice where the out breath is and how long it is. Yes, this is just a starting exercise. What we're going to do now is bring a bit more awareness to this out breath. So we're going to breathe in, hold, then this is the out breath. So I want you to bring more awareness here. Now, I want you to make any sound with this out breath. Okay, so breathe in. Any sound like that. Yeah, so any sound, and while you're breathing out, you're making that kind of a sound. See what kind of sound comes easily for you. Is that okay? Just breathe in, hold, and then make a sound with your out breath. Very good. And I want you, obviously, for your homework to play with this idea and see how much you can lengthen your out breath and see if you can make it longer and longer to be able to recite more and more of the things that we're going to recite, because obviously it's going to be really, really important as we go forward. Now just for today, just to end today, I'm going to bring the 3 fundamental vowel sounds of the Arabic language here. Yeah, we're going to practice all 3 of them, and I want you to say them on your out breath so that you start becoming aware of how long is your out breath. Because if your out breath is only half a second and you have almost no control on it, then it's going to be impossible for you to be able to recite anything at all. So it's going to be really, really important for you to have control on this out breath for as long as whatever it is that you want to recite. Does that make sense? So remember to breathe, hold, and now on the out breath this time we're going to do a sound. So if the first letter of the Arabic alphabet is a, we're going to just make the a sound. Is that okay? So remember to breathe. See how long you can go. And your voice might be a bit stuttery, you might not have perfect control. Don't worry, don't be all self-judgmental. Just notice what happens with your voice and see how long you can keep that going. Just the a sound. Good. I'm going to practice that once more. So we've got 3 vowel sounds. We've got a, u, e. So the a and the e, we're going to smile as much as we can while we're saying it. So, see how long you keep going for. Wonderful. Brilliant. So now we've got some control on your out breath, which is what we're going to use in the next lesson. Now we're going to do the E, okay? So remember to breathe. Smile again when you're saying this. E. See how long you can keep going for. And see how much control you can have on your breath and on your voice. Very important. Good. Now remember to breathe in. I'm going to go ooh. So we're going to round the lips now. We're not going to smile this time. We're going to go ooh. Ooh. See how long you can keep going for on that. And basically, however long you can keep going and however much control you can have is how much you'll be able to read the Quran properly and read whatever you need to read in your prayer properly. So it's important that we start with the fundamental, which is your breath. It depends on your breath. If you can't breathe, you're not going to be able to do these. So that's why the first lesson is going to be bringing awareness to your out breath, noticing how long it is, and seeing if you can say these basic a, u, and e sounds, and for how long you can say them. Okay, so your homework for the breathing section is just to play around with your breath a little bit. See if you can hold your breath in, hold, out, hold. See how long you can hold all of the various positions, and most importantly, how long can you get the out breath to be? How long can you say without running out of breath for? Okay, that's the breathing part of the lesson. And hopefully you can spend a little bit of time every day just practicing on improving your ability to breathe and hold your out breath. Okay, that's the first part of the lesson, which was breathing. Now, the second part of the lesson is going to be to increase your awareness of your prayer. Now, when we come to increasing the awareness of your prayer, one of the main things we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to write down your experience on how your prayer is at the moment. And this is really, really important. From this whole course, the most valuable thing that you're going to have is not this video, it's not me telling you something, it's your own notes. The notes which you make are going to be your most powerful learning tool. They're going to be the most valuable information that you have. So make sure you've downloaded an app so you can make your notes for this lesson, or you've got a notebook which you can write down your notes in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some very simple questions now. And these questions are designed to get you to think about your prayer. You may or may not know the answer. Don't worry too much about getting the right answer or the answer or an answer which you're happy with. Just ask the question. The important thing here, and before we go on, is very important to try and not be so very obsessed about getting the right answer. Yeah. More important than the answer is actually asking the right question. So I want you to be in a position to ask yourself the question. Don't try and use your mind to think of the right answer, but just try and see if you can figure out the answer. The most important thing is asking the question. Does that make sense? And if you can, just keep your awareness on your breath. Try not to be too judgmental to yourself. Because one of the problems which happens is that we become very, very self-judgmental. If I ask you, like, do you pray properly? And you're like, yeah, of course I pray properly. I'm a very good Muslim. And that really doesn't help at all. It's very important just to be honest with yourself. Your body can tell when you lie to yourself. So just be really, really honest. And we're looking for the truth here about these questions. So I'm going to ask you the question. Are you ready? If you've got a journal, try and maybe just think about these questions and see if you can try and write down some of the answers. Okay, I'll give you, make sure you've got your journal or an app to write this down in. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, how many times a day do you pray? Now, for many of you, this may be 5 times. For some of you, it might not be. Some of you may struggle to pray all of your 5 times. So, for those of you that struggle, just think about how many times do you pray, and try and get a good, honest answer for this question. How many times per day do you pray your daily prayers? And some of you may even pray more than 5 times. You may do some extra prayers, like you may pray some extra prayers at night time, or some extra prayers after Fajr prayers. You may do some extra prayers as well. Note those down as well. How many times per day do you pray? Write that down. Question number 1. Good. Now, question number 2 is going to be from the how many other times you pray. If you pray 5 times especially, are they all on the correct time? Or do you sometimes miss the correct time? And again, try not to be too judgmental about this. Try and be honest with yourself and figure out, what time do you pray usually? Is it late? Is it early? Do you sometimes, get a bit carried away or something? That's the second question. First question, how many times per day? Second question, are they usually on the correct time? Or do you sometimes get a bit late? That's question number 2. Okay, so try and figure out the answer to that. Question number 3, and this is going to be different for everyone. So for each of your prayers, if you pray 5 times, for each of your 5 prayers, how many units do you pray per prayer? Does that make sense? So if you pray Fajr, does that mean 2 units or does that mean 4 units? If you pray the Dhuhr prayer, the afternoon prayer, does that mean 4 units? Does that mean 6 units? Does it mean 8 rakats? Do you pray 10? Some of you might pray 12. How many units are each of your daily prayers? So how many other times you pray per day? How many units do each of those consist of? And don't be embarrassed about asking yourself these questions. This is an important question for you to know exactly how many units are in each prayer. Very good. Just take your time to write this down. Become aware of this. Okay, now the next question is, how long does it take you to pray each prayer? So if your Dhuhr prayer has 10 units or 6 units, how many minutes does that take? Now you might not know the answer to this question because you've never timed yourself, so don't worry too much about, you don't have to answer it, you don't have to make something up. Maybe the next time you pray you can maybe try and time yourself and just see how many minutes does it take per prayer, per unit. So if you've got 10 units in your Dhuhr or 6 units in your Dhuhr, how many minutes does that mean? Does that mean 2 minutes? Does that mean 6 minutes? Does that mean 10 minutes? Just ask yourself that question, see what answers come up. If you're not sure at all, just don't worry and ask yourself this question tomorrow. Okay, very good. And the last question for this little exercise of questions is, what time do you go to sleep and what time do you wake up? Now this is an important question because if you're praying Fajr on time, you're going to have to wake up at a certain time. If you're praying any of your prayers on time, the whole discipline is based upon the time you go to sleep and the time you wake up. So what time do you usually go to sleep? And what time do you usually wake up? And do you have a fixed time for sleeping? And do you have a fixed time for waking up? Or do you usually not have control on your sleeping and waking up times? And again, don't be scared of the answer here. It's possible you don't know the answer. So if you're not sure what time you usually go to sleep, just don't worry. Just say, today I'm going to try and figure out what time I go to sleep. And if you're not sure what time you wake up, just try and bring a bit of awareness to the time that you wake up as well. So those are the 5 questions which I wanted you to ask you just to start everything off. So the first question, how many times do you pray? Second question, do you pray on time? Third question, how many units do each prayer have? The fourth question, how long does it take for you to pray those units? And the fifth question, what time do you go to sleep and what time do you wake up? Okay, so now just ask yourself these questions. Now, while you're asking these questions, I want you to realize that the point of this is to develop curiosity. We're aiming to soften your mind. We're aiming to get you a bit more interested in your prayer. The idea is not to be scared and all judgmental and like, oh my God, I'm a really bad Muslim. If that happens, which it will, it's not a bad thing. Don't worry too much if you become a bit judgmental. Oh, I don't pray enough, or I pray too quickly, or I don't know when I sleep. Don't worry too much about not knowing. Just realize, bring awareness to the fact that you don't have that information. And inshallah, you can ask yourself this question later, and hopefully you can fill in your journal with regard to that information. Now, what I said at the beginning is don't try and use your mind to figure out the answer. The most powerful thing about this exercise is the question. So ask yourself the question, and if you don't know the answer, simply move on. Yeah, and don't worry so much about perfecting the answer, but just simply move on to the next question, and then try and bring that question to your day. So tomorrow, ask yourself, like, how many units do I pray in all my prayers? How long does it take for me to pray my prayers? What time do I go to sleep? What time do I wake up? And ask yourself these kind of questions for your prayer. And don't be, scared. What will happen is when you ask these questions, this fear or this self-judgment that you have, you'll start to notice it. It will start bubbling up. So for example, if you ask yourself, how long does it take me to read my 10 units of prayer? And if the answer comes up to be 6 minutes, you might be like, oh my God, that's not good. And that will be your resistance to even understanding this question. So don't worry too much about your resistance. We're going to spend this whole course getting in touch with our resistance and noticing where is it that we're a bit scared of even asking ourselves the truth and figuring out the truth from ourselves. So that's what I want you to do for today. Just ask yourself these 5 questions and see what happens when you start answering these questions. And that's just what I want you to do within this video. Now for your homework, I'm going to give you some more questions. And these are questions which are going to apply to your prayer. So we've got 3 days until the next lesson. So over the course of the next 3 days, your homework for bringing awareness to your Salah is to spend some time every day with that. When you pray, find one of your prayers at least. And before you pray, you're going to ask yourself some questions. And after you finish, you're going to ask yourself some questions as well. So you're going to ask a few questions about the prayer. We're not looking to change the prayer or become better at prayer. We're just looking to bring awareness to how the prayer is at the moment. So I'm going to read through those questions. I'm going to send these questions on the WhatsApp group so you can have a look at the questions there as well. You don't need to write these down because you'll have them available. But these are the questions which are your homework. So the questions are, I just want you to think about them for now and don't worry too much about the answers. Before you start praying, even when you're doing wudu, the ablution for your praying, or even you're just getting ready for your prayer, are you rushing or are you mindful? Are you in a hurry? Are you really just trying to get everything washed? Or are you trying to actually, wash your face with mindfulness, aware of the water? Are you trying to, wipe your head with awareness and wash your feet with awareness? Or are you rushing? Bring awareness to that. Do you rush or are you mindful when doing ablution? When you then come towards your prayer and you start making your journey from your ablution place to wherever you're going to pray, are you rushing? Are you in a hurry? Or do you have time? Are you mindful of that walking? Then also just bringing awareness to how many units do you pray before the obligatory prayer, or do we just jump straight into the obligatory prayer? So do we have a chance, do we have time to actually pray some pre-obligatory prayers like the sunnah prayer, where we're able to actually get ready for the obligatory prayer, or do we just jump straight into the obligatory prayer? And before we start praying, are we able to just give a couple of minutes to take a breath, or do we just jump straight in? Those are the questions I want you to ask yourself before you start praying. Yeah. And now within your prayer, whilst you're praying, what do you usually think about in your prayer? What's the most common thing you daydream about? What comes up most? What do we usually daydream about? Good. And when we're reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, how aware are we of the words compared to how aware are we of our thoughts and our feelings at that time? How much awareness do we actually have of the words? Okay, good. The next question, when we go into ruku, prostration, how much awareness do we have of Subhana Rabbiyal Azim and of the ruku area? And how much are we just thinking about, I don't know, lunch or something? And the same with prostration, when we go into sajda and put our forehead on the floor. How much awareness do we have of Allah? Very good. And where do we usually look when we're in these positions? When we're standing up, where's our eyes? Where do we look? Do we look around the room? Do we not know where we look? Do we look in the sajda position? Are we aware of where our gaze is actually focused? When we're in ruku, where's your gaze focused? So just bring awareness to your gaze and ask yourself that question. And finally, what happens if before starting your prayer, you make sure you take a deep breath, and before starting your dua in ruku, you take a deep breath, and throughout your prayer, you just make sure that you're actually taking a little bit of a breath and aware of your breath while you're praying. What happens then? So those are some of the questions I want you to ponder over for your homework. So alhamdulillah, today we covered breathing, box breathing, breathing in, holding, out and holding. And we focused on the out breath. So and noticing how long is your out breath. And then we asked ourselves some questions about the prayer. And your homework is to try and improve your out breath. See if you can make this a bit longer. And also to ask yourself these questions about your prayer. So that's your homework. The questions will be sent on the WhatsApp group. Ask yourselves these questions about your prayer and journal and write down the answers. Now your notebook will start to become full at this point. So you'll start to have lots of answers. If you're using an app, you'll have loads of notes there now. So try and value those notes. And anything which you think is worth sharing, share it on WhatsApp, share it on the comments in this YouTube. Any notes which you found interesting, share it on the comments on this video, please. So I look forward to seeing you on the next video, and inshallah I'll see you in the Zoom classes which we're having. And until our next video, until our next meeting, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.